Today's an exciting day for me, but I'm also a little bit nervous. I have been wanting to make sourdough for a couple of years, and actually a year or so ago, I tried making a starter. And I don't think that I stuck with it long enough. I think I gave up on it too early. It just didn't seem like it was working, and so I gave up, and I told myself I would come back to it. But yeah, it's been a year or more, and I finally began a new starter a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's ready. We're gonna try it anyway. So the goal for today is to make one, hopefully two, beautiful loaves of sourdough. So we're gonna start that process today. It will sit overnight and we'll finish it tomorrow. But fingers crossed this turns out really, really well, because I love the idea of creating lots of different things with sourdough. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So this can be proofing for part of the day. We'll go ahead and get the first part of it mixed together. And then we'll just go through step by step the process and hopefully get a great end result. So I'm excited. I'm optimistic, and we'll just see how this goes. So first thing we're gonna do is grab the kitchen scales. We're gonna zero that out. And this recipe calls for 1,000 grams of all-purpose flour. So we're gonna start with measuring that. And to that, we're going to add 750 grams of warm filtered water. So I've just warmed this water up in my electric kettle, and it's not boiling. It is just a little bit warmer than room temperature. All right, 755, and that's close enough. And we're just going to mix this together until we have a shaggy dough. And all of this flour is incorporated into the water. I really like these Danish whisk for mixing dough. They just seem to do a really good job. Okay, so that is a pretty shaggy dough. Definitely sticky. So all we're going to do is then cover this up, and it's going to sit for an hour. So I learned a pretty cool trick from other sourdough makers online, that plastic shower caps are perfect for covering up your dough while it's proofing. I just went to the Dollar General and got a 10-pack of these, and that's going to work perfectly. Now you want to do this step about an hour before your sourdough has peaked. So I fed my sourdough this morning at about 7:30, and it normally takes several hours for me and the temperature of the house to get that sourdough starter at peak. So I'm guessing in about an hour, and it doesn't have to be exact, but about an hour it will be at peak. So I have started this process. It will sit for an hour, and then after that hour, we'll go ahead and get that sourdough starter mixed in. So that dough has been sitting there for almost an hour, and I'm going to go ahead and get my sourdough starter measured out. I'm doing that in a separate bowl because once you start pouring this, sometimes it tends to come out quickly, and I just don't want to be fishing the starter out of the dough mixture. So I'm measuring out 250 grams of starter. And this is why the separate bowl, because if you go a little heavy, you can always take a little bit out, and then you can always add a little bit more back in if you need to. Now, I don't plan on using this starter again for probably another week. So I'm going to go ahead and feed the starter like I normally would. I'm just putting in a half a cup of flour, and then I'll put in a half a cup of water, distilled water. It doesn't, or it shouldn't come from your tap anyway because there's chlorine in there. All right, so when you're not using this, actually I'm going to wipe that off. When you're not planning on baking with your starter anytime soon, then you just want to feed it and then immediately put it into the fridge, but you want it airtight. These wet jars are great for that because you can leave the rubber seal off when you're leaving it out on the counter and feeding it every day. But when you're ready to put it away, let it go to sleep for a little while, you can put the rubber stopper on and just stick it in the fridge. And we're going to bring our dough back. And we're going to go ahead and mix this starter in with the dough that we mixed earlier. Now this recipe actually will make 2 loaves. With any luck at all. Okay, and then we're going to mix in 20 grams that I've already pre-measured of sea salt. That was probably a mistake because that has gotten really stretchy. So we're just going to mix this in with our hands. All right. So we're going to pinch and pull for 10 minutes. I've set a timer. Going to help that get mixed in there really well. Now, so far, this seems like very similar to what I have seen on YouTube channels and Instagram. I've been following a lot of content creators who deal with sourdough, and they make it look so easy. And I really think that it is. I think sometimes you get something in your head that just feels a little intimidating for whatever reason. And once you do it a couple times, you realize there really wasn't anything to be worried about. I think that probably the greatest challenge is just getting that sourdough starter going and active and not giving up on it when it doesn't seem to be doing what you think it's supposed to do. The first time I created a sourdough starter, first of all, I think I just used way too much. And then it got like a watery gray liquid on top of it. And I thought that I had ruined it. But they call that hooch. And most people say that it's okay to just go ahead and mix that in there and just keep letting it, feeding it every day and letting it activate. You can really start to feel that dough resisting. It's a little bit harder to stretch that. And I think that's what you want. Okay, I have pinched and pulled that for 10 minutes. I'm going to use this bowl scraper to get the sides down in there also. Now we're going to cover this up again, and it's going to sit on the counter for an hour or until we start to see some bubbles forming. My shower cap. All right. We will check on that in an hour. Okay, this has been sitting actually about an hour and a half. It's starting to get a few little bubbles, but I'm going to go ahead and do the first stretch and fold. So we're actually just going to do 4 stretch and folds. We're going to pick up. I'm actually going to wet my hands a little bit for this one because it will help at this point. So we're going to pick up and stretch and fold over on itself. And then we're going to do a quarter turn. Wet my hand a little bit. Pick up, stretch, fold it in on itself. One last quarter turn. Okay. And then we're just going to cover it back up. And it's going to sit for another hour. And we're just going to do that every hour. 4 stretch and pulls every hour until this has doubled in size. So it's a little cool in here today, so it may take a while. Okay, I think we're going to call this good. Mostly because I think it is, but also because I'm tired and want to go to bed. We're going to go ahead and sprinkle some flour. All right, and we're just going to let this come out of the bowl very slowly. And gently. Whew. Now at this point, I'm going to take my pastry cutter and go ahead and cut this into 2 loaves. Still a pretty sticky dough. Okay. And I'm just going to fold that over on top of itself to form a ball. Pick up and turn around. Let's get a little more flour here. Okay, I'm just going to tuck the edges in up underneath this. And then I'm going to do the same with this one. Ooh. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is just let these rest for 10 minutes on the counter. That one tucked in a little bit better. There we go, that's better. I'm happier with that. Okay, so these are going to rest for 10 minutes on the counter, and then we'll be back after that. Okay, these have been resting for 10 minutes. I'll give them a good flouring. All right, and we're going to scrape these up, and over they go. I'm just going to spread this carefully into a rectangle. I'm not going to press down. I don't want to press out any of the air bubbles. But I am going to stretch it a little bit. Okay, so then we're going to fold, and we're going to fold, and then we're going to roll and give it a little stretch. Roll and stretch. Okay, I'm going to flour the proofing bowl really well. And then we're going to pick this up and turn it upside down. We're going to do the same for this one. Over she goes. And we're going to give it a little bit of a stretch. Same, we're going to fold it and fold it and roll and stretch. Okay. Do the same thing with this bowl. Give it a flouring. Pick it up. Upside down she goes. Okay, now we're going to flour the tops of these. They're not going to stick to the plastic. And then we'll cover them with our shower caps. And these are going to sit on the counter for another hour. Okay, these have been sitting for an hour, and I think they are ready. Just going to give them a little press here. You press in, and then they slowly come back up. That means that they should be good to go. We're going to put these in the refrigerator overnight, and then I will get them out and bake them in the morning. Good morning. These little babies have been in the fridge all night. We are ready to bake. Now I've preheated the oven to 500, and I have the Dutch oven in there with it, and it has just come to temperature. And I also put a baking stone on the very bottom rack because it's supposed to keep the bottom of the bread from getting too dark. All right, so I have these silicone mats. I've never tried these before. We're going to give them a go. We'll just go ahead and put that like that. Flip those over. Hopefully that'll come out. Hopefully. Oh. She's a little uneven. We've got a little bit of a dip right here, but I don't guess that's going to matter much. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give this some flour again. And then I'm going to score the top. This bread's going to split anyway, so if you score the top, you get to control that a little bit more. All right. We're not going to get real fancy for my first loaf. We're just going to try and give it. There we go. Okay, we'll see how that works. I want to get this very heavy and very hot pot out of the oven. Okay. And she goes. Whoops. Goodness gracious. All right, we're going to put the lid back on. Put her in the oven. And that's going to bake for 20 minutes. At that point, we will reduce the temperature and cook it with the lid off. Okay, it's time to take the lid off. Oh, that's looking so good already. All right, we're going to reduce the heat to 450. Ooh, that was still hot. And we're going to cook for an additional 30 minutes. She is done. I don't have a lot to go on because I've never made this before. I feel like that's a pretty good loaf, but I won't know for sure until I open her up. I suspect it might be a little bit underproofed, but I may be wrong. I just feel like maybe a little more height around the edges. But again, I'm brand new starter, first bake. So, I mean, this may be great. I'm just gonna put it on this cooling rack. And we're gonna let that cool completely before we slice into it. So I've put the Dutch oven back in and turned the oven back up to 500 because we do have that second loaf. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the second loaf, and then I will show you the results of both when they're done. Okay, my friend, these are done. This one is still warm, so I'm just going to let that finish, but look at the color on that. Now this one got a little bit darker. Not sure why it cooked for the same amount of time, but it did get a little bit darker. That ridge got a little bit darker. This one, I think that baking stone really worked. The bottom of that is just perfect. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Crunchy sounding. I think that that's going to be really good. I hope that's going to be really good. So I'm going to move these over to the side. We're going to bring this one that has already cooled, head into this and see what we have. Oh, love the sound of that crunch. Look at that. Now I feel like we have some work to do. I think we've got some good airiness. There's plenty of holes there. I think that's a really good first attempt. I'll continue to feed my starter and see if that makes a difference the older that starter gets. And I may even try a couple of different recipes for this and see how those turn out. That bounces right back. Yeah, I think we have a pretty good first attempt here. Now, of course, the proof is in the eating. Need to sharpen this knife. Let's get a little dab of butter. Maybe a big dab of butter. Anything more comforting than just good butter spread on homemade bread. Now, I've eaten plenty of sourdough, but I can't say that I've ever eaten sourdough this fresh. And this just came out of the oven about an hour and a half ago. All right, here we go. There's nothing wrong with that. I may do my happy dance. That crust is so crunchy. Just a little bit of a chew. And the inside is very tender. It's not gummy. If I had to guess, I would probably say this could have used maybe a little bit more proofing. Although, I'm no expert, so I'm just going to have to do some trial and error here. The actual bread sat out for about 6 hours yesterday. I think I did 5 stretch and pulls. And it was about 6 hours before I put it in the refrigerator. So I'm thinking, that should have been enough time to proof. But I'm also menopausal and I keep it very cool in here. So we'll try it again next time and give it a little bit longer. But my gosh, that is really good. For a brand new starter and my first loaf of sourdough bread, I am calling this a huge success. So yeah, I'm going to finish enjoying this. I hope you've enjoyed going through this process with me. And I hope that it would encourage you to try sour bread. If you've been a little intimidated like I've been, my advice is just do it. Like anything else in life, if you want to do something, just start it. You can learn as you go. I trust that with every loaf I'll learn something new, and this will just get better and better. So thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.